Hi, thank you for joining my presentation at Anomicon. My name is Heather Moser. I am a researcher and producer for a small independent documentary film company out of Ohio called Small Town Monsters. We talk about all kinds of weird stuff, and I hope that you are familiar with us. If not, you need to look us up, right? But anyway, I'm also a podcaster and a writer. You can tune in to my podcast, The Lore You Know, and hear me talk to storytellers and really awesome human beings about all kinds of interesting stuff. But that's not why we're here today. We are here today for me to talk to you about cursed objects, letters, and community. But before we begin, before we get into exactly all of the connections that we're going to make here, let's talk about what is a cursed object, right? Give me some examples. All right. Well, a cursed or haunted object can be a variety of things, from rocks, like this dude here, to coins. Obviously, you know what a coin is, to dolls. And I hope that you're familiar with this guy. His name is Robert, if you're not. It's not the first time you're going to see him or the last time you're going to see him on this. But each are associated with a known haunted location or story, and sometimes the rules are different, from warnings of do not disturb, do not remove from their location, like rocks, to ask permission before you take a picture with or of the doll, like Robert. Annabelle's another one as well. Okay, so those are cursed objects, but why are they cursed, right? This is a big question. Well, one, they're all associated with known haunted locations or stories, like I said, whether that's a haunted museum, a forest, a graveyard, or a cave. Number two, they have the reputation of being cursed or haunted, and we're not going to get pedantic here and differentiate between cursed and haunted. We're going to use those interchangeably for the sake of this presentation. But they have the reputation of being cursed or haunted because those who take them from their resting place, or in the case of Robert again, take a picture without permission, have disturbing experiences after being in contact with said object. You're probably thinking, sure, okay, but what actually happens? What do you mean by disturbing experiences, right? Well, the list is actually pretty endless. Divorce, car accidents, nightmares, injuries, trauma of various kinds. In general, all manner of horrible befalls those who not only interact with these objects, but also remove them from their location. And you're thinking, okay, fine, that's a lot. But how does this happen? How does this occur, right? Well, tourists or visitors will remove the objects from their original location and then almost immediately find themselves in dire straits. Whether that's something like a flat tire on the way home, or heatedly arguing with their spouse or their children out of nowhere, to getting into an accident. And sometimes, if it isn't immediate, it's weeks or months later, and they end up with serious illnesses or spouses end up divorced. Something awful befalls the one who removed the object from its original resting place. Or again, like I said, with Robert here, took a picture without permission or was disrespectful. So then these people have these experiences, and what do, right? Well, this is where we get into the idea of letters. A lot of people take time to deduce what could be the root cause of this misfortune in their lives, right? And they ultimately recall, wow, I broke a bit of a taboo by removing something from that location that I visited that was supposedly haunted. So they think back and they realize that they made a mistake. And then many people opt to either return said item or donate it to a museum that procures haunted objects. But more often than not, the key here is that these items are sent back with a letter. And it's this letter that we can examine. You're saying a letter. Yeah, a letter. And they all follow the same formula, oddly enough. You have the introduction, an explanation of what has happened, and or just details as to where the item was removed, an apology, and then a signature. Now, a lot of these letters, the signatures are obscured just for this, anonymity of the person who is sending it, but they usually sign their name. And they return these items in hopes that they get put back into their rightful place and that the misfortunes that have befallen them will lessen and disappear over time. So we have letters, we have cursed objects. But what about community, right? What does this say about community? Well, it's pretty simple, really. We all deal with misfortune in our lives. How that comes about and the timing of it is different for everyone. But we all ultimately seek an explanation as to why we're suffering. And we all hope, right? And we all take action to alleviate the pain. And although these letter writers may not know one another, they absolutely form a community. They share solidarity in misfortune and regret, and most importantly, they share hope that their actions by returning the item or the letter of apology will make a difference. So let's go over some examples of these letters. This one comes from Gettysburg. You should be familiar with Gettysburg Military Park. This one's from 2006. In 2006, I was visiting the Gettysburg Military Park. While out on the battlefield, I picked these pieces up. Yes, it was wrong, and I'm sorry. Since then, I've had nothing but horrible times, injured on the job, several suspensions, relationship failures, etc. Perhaps coincidental? Maybe. But I'm returning this small stone and twig. Please return them to where I picked them up on top of the Devil's Den area. Now, these letters come in all the time. And the National Park Service has them, and they'll save them for a short amount of time. I know this because I talked with park rangers from Gettysburg, actually. They save them for a short amount of time, and then they destroy them because they have no use for them. I think that it would be worth studying them in more depth and getting them cataloged. But regardless, here's another letter. This is from October 24th, 2010. To the city of Gettysburg. A few years ago, I visited Gettysburg for a brief while as I was returning home from a business trip in DC. I walked around the battlefield for just a little bit, a field located just off a main road. As I was headed back to my car, I noticed a small hole burrowed in the side of a slight incline. I peeked inside and saw a projectile-like stone. I removed the stone and washed off the mud to get a better look. The rock itself has what appears to be powder burn on one side. This led me to conclude that it may have had some connection to the battle. I took it home with the intention of caring for the stone, and in doing so, honor the befallen of that vicious battle. Since I've come into possession of this stone, I have experienced unwavering misfortune. In summary, I have lost my wife to divorce, lost jobs, homes, friends, money, all in rapid succession. I've been in car accidents, been a victim of fraud, faced legal problems, and have even been hospitalized. I would never have thought to connect my misfortune with the removal of this stone had it not been for a video I recently saw on YouTube. This video showcased alleged cursed objects that science cannot explain. There was a segment about people becoming cursed after removing stones from the Gettysburg battlefield. This curse caused eerily similar misfortunes, from divorce to hospitalizations. I have exhausted all conventional means of recovering, so returning this stone to your custody doesn't seem as ridiculous an option to me as it may have been prior to everything that has come to pass. Please return this stone to the field of honor as soon as possible with my most sincere apologies. I am sorry for removing this stone from its hallowed place. I never intended to offend or disturb or to desecrate. If there is truly a curse, by returning this stone, may it be lifted from me. Please accept my deepest regret and know I meant no harm. So now we've talked about Gettysburg. Let's move to the other side of the country, because this isn't an isolated incident. It's not isolated to the United States either. But for the sake of this presentation, we're going to stay in the US. So we were in Gettysburg, which is in Pennsylvania, for those who are not familiar. We're moving now all the way over to Hawaii. This is regarding sacred lava stones in Hawaii. Here's a letter again. Dear Madam Pele, enclosed, please find some lava that my husband and I took home as a souvenir in 1973 from a lava flow that closed the black sand beaches. We didn't realize it was taboo or bad luck to keep lava and that it would make you angry. We certainly have had more than our fair share of bad luck, and we are terribly sorry to have angered you. Please accept these back with our most humble apologies, and please release the curse. Another one. This one's paraphrased. In July of 1973, while visiting one of the craters, I picked up a rock after I was told not to. When I returned home, I went through a messy divorce. Since then, I've had innumerable problems. Nearly lost my job to depression, developed very rare bone disease, had several strokes, lost my eyesight, had several operations, and I've been forced to retire. I now have leukemia and am being treated weekly. Although I don't believe in the Polynesian gods or their legions, I'm not in a position to argue. So I am returning the rock that I took, along with my apologies. Now, these rumors of curses on these objects and not removing them for fear of Madame Pele cursing you is pretty well known. Even children are aware of the dangers. This example, again, dear Mr. Park Ranger, my grandpa accidentally took a lava rock because he didn't know it was bad luck. Love, Mary Ann. Okay, so we've talked about items from locations with a bloody history, like Gettysburg, and lava rocks cursed by the goddess Pele. But what about items that are tied to a location that has been known to be haunted for hundreds of years? Let's talk about the Bell Witch for a moment. First of all, let's do a quick recap of the legend. So in 1817, the Bell family that lived in Adams, what is now known as Adams, Tennessee, in Robertson County, Tennessee, started having all kinds of poltergeist activity. The first inclination that something was wrong was when John Bell, the patriarch of the family, was out in the fields and he saw a dog with a rabbit's head. First inclination for him was to shoot at it, which he did, and it disappeared. Shortly after that, other things started to occur around the house. Like they would hear scratching on the walls, the kids would complain about their hair being pulled, they would be pinched, gnawing sounds on their bedpost, they'd light lamps and look around to see what was making the noise, and nothing would appear. This went on for quite some time until they invited their neighbor over, James Johnston. He came over with his wife. They started to hear similar things, and James decided that he was going to demand that this entity tell them what it was, what it wanted, why it was there. And pretty soon, these sounds turned to whispers, and the whispers turned to talking, and eventually we have a disembodied voice explaining that her sole purpose is to hurt and kill John Bell. She is not a fan of him. She also isn't a fan of the daughter, Betsy Bell, and she makes things extremely difficult for them for the next several years. Ultimately, John Bell ends up dead on December 20th, 1820. The witch, poltergeist, whatever you want to call her, trickster, she takes complete credit for killing John Bell and says that she fixed him up real good. She laughs at his funeral, carries on, continues torturing Betsy until Betsy breaks off an engagement to her suitor. She ends up getting remarried later, but not to the man that she had been in love with, and then disappears for a while. She comes back 7 years later, has some prophecies of what is coming, including the Civil War, and then she disappears again. Regardless of all of that happening, only between 1817 and 1821, when she disappears and then comes back 7 years later, things still happen in that area, in the area of Adams, Tennessee, even though it's been a while, a couple hundred years, right? All of this to say, today you can visit Adams, Tennessee. It's a really small town, very cute. You can see some of the original Bell family property as well. One location in particular has become a tourist attraction. It's known as the Bell Witch Cave. It's an area that still has ghostly activity to this day. And just like those who write letters after removing rocks from Hawaii or Gettysburg, there are warnings against taking rocks from the cave at Adams, Tennessee. So let's go through some of those letters as well. The Bell Witch Cave rocks. September 3rd, 2014. I am returning this rock that I picked up on the low, narrow part of the cave. Yes, I read all of the letters in the office. And yes, I heard the guide say it was bad luck to bring home a rock from the cave. And that's exactly why I took it. I was curious. As we all know, curiosity killed the cat. I hit my head on the rock ceiling as soon as I picked up the rock. That should have made me put it back. Then the author goes into outlining all of these family troubles that had occurred and explains that he talked with his family about what was going on and says, needless to say, they, the family, all agreed on one thing: send the damn rock back. Another one, June 17th, 2007. Dear Bellwitch Cave owners, a few weeks ago, my husband and I visited your cave and log home tourist site. Unbeknownst to me, my husband picked up a rock at the mouth of the cave and didn't give it to me until we were heading home. If I had known, I would have had him put it back immediately. Well, bad luck has come my way now. Please tell the witch I am sorry for what my husband has done. The Bellwitch Cave is a great example of modern day folklore morphing in front of our eyes. So now we can see the cursed objects have gone beyond just the rocks in the cave. Example, Chris Kirby, the owner, and her daughter create these really grotesque looking dolls. They get porcelain dolls and they put makeup on their face, paint their faces to make them look scary. And then they sell them in the gift shop. Sometimes they get returned and then they get resold, by the way, if they get returned. But here's an example of one, just so you can see it. This is, oh, she's got a hat. This is Sasha. My daughter named her. So this letter doesn't accompany Sasha, but this letter did accompany a doll that was sent back. February of 2017. Sorry to send back this doll I bought on my trip to the cave, but I have had bad dreams about her. I feel sadness when I go in my room. I am suffering with sickness and depression. Right after I purchased her, a chain of unexplained bad events started to happen. I apologize if this seems strange. Other dolls are sent elsewhere, not necessarily back to the cave, but they're sent to places like the Archive of the Afterlife in West Virginia and now reside along other haunted objects. But regardless of where the dolls end up, letters still follow them. We still see examples of this community that's being built. For example, a letter that followed one to the Archive of the Afterlife. Hi, my name is Anonymous. I live in Stearns, Kentucky, and my family is in the same bloodline as John Bell. We went to the Bellwitch Cave in July of 2018. Yes, I was curious, so I took a rock from the cave. I also purchased this Indian doll, and I am sending the doll Blossom to you because I can't handle all of the bites and scratches anymore. Thank you so much. Okay, so what does this say about community and human nature, right? Well, Dr. Willis Harmon explains when we attach meaning to a belief, it would have power, no matter how recently it was created, like with the dolls. When people come to believe it, the whole world would shift in terms of in terms of that belief. In other words, we want an explanation as to why, right? What about truth behind some of these legends? Not that there aren't places with true stories where we can verify and attach the land more easily than Adams, Tennessee, like the deaths at Gettysburg, for example. But the truth behind the stories in many of these instances, it just doesn't really matter. All it takes is suggestion. Dr. Jane Houston suggests that even the lure that started as a means to hinder tourists from removing rocks out west, because that was a thing, they were losing pieces of an old west town, a ghost town, to tourists just taking bits and pieces. So they started a myth about if you take something, you'll be cursed. It didn't really stop people from taking them, by the way. It just caused more people to send them back with letters of apology and regret. But Dr. Jane Houston suggests that the lore started as a means to hinder tourists from removing rocks, became storied, and it became a myth. With the affirmation of thousands of people yearly, it entered into the realm of the collective unconscious. Others have suggested that the very act of visiting such a site allows tourists to have a heightened sense about their environment, allowing even those who do not believe in such things still absorb these folktales. And later, when their lives fall apart, they can think back to the story of the curse in an attempt to understand the otherwise unknowable and regain a little bit of control by returning whatever item they had removed. In other words, we can find community, even amongst strangers, when examining cursed objects and their influence on those who have procured them. We can see evidence of this community by examining the letters that accompany those objects when they are returned to their original location. So, Robert, Sasha, and I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this presentation. Until next time.